Hello and welcome to the Choralosophy Podcast. I'm Chris Muntz, I'm the host of the show, and this is episode 34, Copyright Law Myths and the Future of Choral Publishing. The guest today is Susan LaBarr. I had a really good time talking to Susan LaBarr and about a wide range of topics because as we all look forward to an uncertain future in our choral rehearsals, we might also turn our attention to what is an already rapidly changing market for choral sheet music. For a conversation on this topic, Susan and I kind of traveled the gamut of issues facing the publishing world. Our conversation was wide-ranging from the changes that have occurred over the last 10 years to her prognostications of things to come. We also discussed common myths about copyright law and the pros and cons of traditional publishing and self-publishing, and just all of the ins and outs of that. So it's a lengthy conversation, and though I think you're going to find it worthwhile, and especially in this coming age of copyright questions related to streaming, recording, all those things are going to be more relevant to us than ever. So that's why this episode is out there for you today. Hopefully it's helpful. Before we get too much further into it, though, I need to do a news bulletin, which is not really normally what this show is, but news bulletin right here at the beginning. Some of you have heard and have been sharing and have been seeing on Facebook a story about how Missouri is proposing the elimination of music, art, and PE and other large classes. That is not accurate. And I want to try to correct the record so that if you see it out there on Facebook, you can kind of stop that fake news. And I've had some arguments with local reporters on how they're framing this as well. So I've heard it presented as Missouri is recommending, and that is not true, and here's why. There is an organization in Missouri called the Missouri School Boards Association, and that is a voluntarily joined organization for professional development and resources for local school board members to join to learn how to be better school board members. It is not the Missouri School Board. It is not it's not our Missouri Department of Education. There's no connection there at all. This is simply an advisory committee that is putting together this document. And they didn't even mean for it to be taken as a final recommendation. This was supposed to be a rough draft that all the stakeholders in Missouri were going to hash out and talk about. So if you see that, don't freak out. Yes, we're nervous about the future, of course, like in every state, about choral music and about music in school, but that is actually not something that is being recommended by anyone in Missouri that has any decision-making power as of right now. So hopefully that doesn't change for the worse as this podcast ages, but that's what's going on right now. And so before we get into the episode with Susan, just wanted to point out and shout out the sponsor for this episode is vocevistavideo.com or vocevista.com/choralosophy. Voce Vista Video is a product that if you are going to be looking for ways to increase the versatility of your instruction to move from in-classroom to online and potentially back and forth, as we all know that that's a possibility, I would have on your computer at school a copy downloaded of Voce Vista Video. There are tons of things you can do with it in the classroom to show kids how the sound wave of the human voice looks and how the overtone spectrum of the human voice looks, especially when it's correct or incorrect. Cool things that you can do on there is if they sing with that breathy onset, that ha, they can see on the screen all the breathy splotches of sound. And if they get that connection to a resonant pure tone, they can see the difference on the screen as well. So that's cool. But if they're in distance learning, they can send you recordings and have you run it through the analyzer. And there's all kinds of cool stuff you can learn about their voice that's happening, even if you can't hear them very well on a Zoom lesson. So I would strongly encourage you to head over to vocevista.com/choralosophy, and then you can download a free copy and play with it for 30 days. And if you like it, then you go ahead and buy it through that link and put Choralosophy at checkout, and they're going to give you 10% off. And that's an awesome investment that you will use frequently. And of course, if you have any trouble or have any questions using it, let me know, and I'd be happy to help. So without any further ado, I'm going to bring you the conversation with Susan LaBarr. Okay, everybody, I'm here with Susan LaBarr, which is a name that most of you guys will probably recognize for her beautiful composition work. But I've asked her here today to talk a little bit about that, but also just the publishing side of her job that she is very heavily involved in. And I thought that would be a really important thing for us to discuss right now as we plan for whether or not we're going to have ensembles in the near future. But at some point, we're going to have to be planning for the purchasing of new sheet music. And I've been thinking a lot about that lately during quarantine of how this might affect the future of publishing and the future of publishing of sheet music in general. So I've asked Susan to come on and give her thoughts, and we're just going to chat back and forth on this topic. So Susan, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. You've done such great work with this podcast so far, and so I'm just honored. And I hope that I can have something to offer to everyone in this realm. I certainly don't know all the answers or anything like that, but I feel like I can maybe give a little bit of insight.
Well, that's great. And of course, one of my big philosophies that governs this show is nobody knows all the answers. But the only way that we would find even a little bit of them is if we talk about this stuff and start to get our brains spinning about that. So that would be the goal today. Before we get started, though, why don't you just tell us a little bit about you? Maybe some things that we wouldn't find on your website or on the publishing company's website.
Yeah, I'll start long ago. Growing up, I grew up playing the piano and also singing in choirs from a young age, and had a fairly musical family. My sister played violin, my mom played guitar and flute, and my dad claimed not to be a singer, but singing in church next to him, I could hear that he actually had a great voice. Music was always a part of my life. And so I decided to go to school, to my undergraduate degree for music. When I started school, I started as a piano performance major. And after about 2 years, realized that I didn't really want to accompany, I didn't really want to play the piano, and I didn't want to teach piano. So I switched my degree to a more general degree, a Bachelor of Arts in Music with a travel and tourism minor. And that kind of just allowed me to continue on the path of studying music and trying to figure out what I might want to do with it. I didn't at the time have really any desire to be a composer, or really, I wouldn't say a desire, really, like a thought. I didn't really have the thought of being a composer at the time. I just enjoyed learning about music composition. So once I graduated, I still had no idea what I wanted to do in music. So I had recently gotten married, and my husband was starting his graduate work in the Dallas area in Texas. And so we moved to Denton, Texas, and I started working at a cardiologist office as a receptionist, because I found out that that's one of the jobs you can get with a master's degree in music theory, is something totally unrelated to music. So I worked there for about a little over a year, and learned a lot about insurance and all that sort of thing. And then an opportunity came up in the Dallas area with a company called Choristers Guild, which is an amazing company that is a music publisher, but also a resource to church choirs and handball choirs, youth choirs, children's choirs. There was an opportunity to work there as an office manager and membership coordinator. So I applied for that job, got that job, started working there. So that was my first foray into working in a music publisher. Mm-hmm. I quickly realized, this is awesome. I get to work with musicians every day, with choir directors from all over the country, all over the world, and saw that there were opportunities in actually working with the music itself. And our choral editor moved, during the time I was there, he moved to a position with Hal Leonard. And so that position opened up, and I moved into that position. I was just in the right place with the right skills, the right background, and this degree that I had no idea could lead me to a job in publishing. So I was at Choristers Guild for several years until an opportunity came up with Walton Music to move into the editor position there. So I've been at Walton, I think, for 6 years now, and it's just an incredible place to be. During all of that time, I was also composing and arranging, really from my master's degree on through all of those years and up to now. So it's been interesting to see how publishing and composing have kind of gone together.
Right. So there was no grand plan then from young Susan to to work in publishing. That was never the dream of your little pigtails you when you were young.
Right,
Correct?
right. I would always like sit at the piano when I was little and make up little songs or even write lyrics or whatever, but I never really thought I never just realized that could be a thing, I guess. I have a good friend here in Springfield named Katie, and she's also a composer, and we get together and talk a lot. And we took piano lessons from the same teacher when we were in middle school and high school. And that teacher required all of her students, every single one of her students, from like the youngest to the oldest, to enter this competition that used to exist. I'm not sure if it still exists, but it's called Reflections here in Springfield, Missouri. And she required every student to write a composition on the piano and submit it for that competition. And so Katie and I were talking about, being young women, even being children, composing was just something that, we were expected to do it. There was never a question of like, can I do it because I'm a girl, or can I do it because I'm young? It was like, no, you're just expected to do it. So I think even though I didn't have this grand plan to be a composer, it kind of has always been a part of my makeup.
So how would you say, like, so now that it's kind of, I'm going to assume everybody's career is always evolving, but you've been kind of in a stride for the last 5 or 6 years, probably. If you had to give a rough estimate of your professional time every week, what percentage would you say is dedicated to publishing work for Walton, and what percentage is dedicated to you composing and doing your own stuff?
Yeah, so my full-time job is my job with Walton. So I do work, 40 hours a week. I kind of feel like I work 40 hours, but yet also 24/7 with Walton, because I'm just constantly thinking of things. It's not just a job. It's like it's life, and it's my passion. It's what I love. I actually love my work editing and helping other composers even more than I love composing. So composing, it kind of just depends if I have a commission coming up. But I spend significantly less time composing. And I also don't have, like a lot of composers, I don't have a goal to become a full-time composer. I just know that's not for me. I like composing a few pieces a year, and that kind of gets my fill, but it doesn't become too overwhelming. So if I have a piece that's due soon, then I'll probably work a few hours a day on it, but it's a lot less than my time editing.
Well, that makes sense. I think it's interesting, or might be interesting for people to think about how most of us in the choral world know who you are from your compositions and the pieces of yours that we've sung, but that's really your side hustle.
Yeah, it totally is. It is. Yeah. And it's something like like I said, I never really set out to do. I know I'm very fortunate in that regard, that this kind of came to me in a way. And I really do love getting to create art for the world. I feel so honored and privileged to get to do that. And yeah, but it's not a consuming thing for me. I also have a 5-year-old child, so
Right.
that things changed a lot the year he was born. I decided to really cut back on how many projects I would take a year.
Yeah, that's great. So, in the time that you've been working in publishing, kind of shifting gears to that side of the conversation, what changes have you already seen to be it the technology, to the competition with it in the market of other ways of achieving and creating sheet music? What types of stuff on a professional level have you in your industry had to deal with already in the last 10 to 15 years?
Yeah, I will mention 8 things that I have thought about that I have seen a lot of changes in the publishing industry. I know that helps me when I'm listening to something to know, like, okay, what am I set up here for? How many things do I have to hear about? So 8 ways that I've seen the publishing industry change in approximately the last 10 years, or since I've been in this world working intimately with all of this. A huge one that is so obvious that probably to everybody is a rise in digital sales versus print music sales. What is kind of interesting about that currently is that digital sales quantities are still significantly lower than print sales quantities. So where an edition might sell 5,000 copies in a year, it might sell around 200 digital copies a year. So there are questions there of, are people buying fewer digital copies and then making photocopies of them, or distributing that to their singers, without buying enough copies for everyone? I'm not sure. I mean, there's not really a way to know that. And what I tend to think is that people who are going to do the right thing will do it. Maybe I'm really naive in that, but I think people will do the right thing, especially in our industry, when they know what the right thing is. So, a person could buy a PDF and distribute it or make copies of it illegally, but they could also buy one copy of the sheet music and scan that and distribute it, or make copies illegally. So I think most people are trying to do the right thing. And those digital sales that we've seen, at least at our company, at Walton Music, have not negatively impacted the print music sales. If anything, they seem to actually have strengthened the print music sales. So when we see a piece that sells well digitally, it's also selling really well in print. So that's just been interesting to see, and I think we'll see that continue to change, which we might talk about later.
Well, that's interesting to point that out, because then I think you're seeing the big picture from your end, but that resonated with me when you said that, because I know I'm more likely to buy a whole bunch of print copies of something if the digital copy is available also, because I'm an audiator and I want to hear the choir in my head sing it before I buy it, and if I can't see the whole piece, so I'll frequently go and buy the minimum of the digital download, whatever. And then if I like it and I think it works for my choir, then I'll go ahead and order the print version if it's available to have sent to me very frequently, because I don't want to deal with the copy machine and I have a budget to buy stuff. So that makes sense in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think it does too. And I think that obviously, accessibility to technology is not really worldwide and fair yet. So there are a lot of course, there are several schools where all of the students have iPads and they probably, all have internet access at home and all these things, but there are so many more who don't have access to those things yet. So until we can really have that accessibility for everyone, and also music viewing technology that's better, it's continuing to improve every year, but it's still not perfected yet, in my opinion. Just being able to have a good system on your iPad or whatever to view the music digitally. It's all getting there, but it's not there yet. So I think we'll continue to see the print music sales, and so many conductors really rely on that print copy. I'm the same way. I prefer to sing from, when I'm singing in a choir, from a print copy. So everyone has different views on that.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Other big changes.
Yeah. So the second thing that I love thinking about and exploring and talking about is the rise in self-publishing, and also composer collectives and composer marketplaces versus traditional publishing. So that this brings up a lot of different things, and I think I'm able to look at it from a really balanced point of view because I'm a composer and I work for a traditional publisher. So first off, obviously, I believe in the traditional publisher because I work for one, and I also publish all of my music through a traditional publisher. But I think that there are so many great things as well about self-publishing. So when a composer self-publishes, they are able to retain all of the copyrights for their works. They don't have to sign that over to a traditional publisher. So that's great for the composer, that they can keep control over their art. The profits from the sale of the work stay with the composer rather than being split with a publisher. In a composer collective or marketplace, the agreement is usually that the company keeps some of the profit, but not too much. The composer receives usually a higher royalty than they would at a traditional publisher. The composer also keeps their copyright to their work. It does not get signed over to that marketplace or collective. So those are all really amazing things, very composer-centric, great for many people to be able to do that. In self-publishing, all of those good things also mean that the composer has to do a lot more and a lot different work than maybe they otherwise would. The behind the scenes work of marketing, managing a website, sales, invoicing, shipping, printing, keeping up with privacy concerns when they're collecting customer information, sales, transactions, taxes, accounting. So I think that composers have to weigh how much time they want to spend doing that type of work versus actually creating the art. Some full-time composers have been able to do that really well. A lot of them end up having to hire an assistant of some sort to handle some of that stuff, or some of them end up distributing their music through a company, or maybe having their music printed by some other company, not just doing that in-house. In a composer collective or marketplace, I think that the concern there is that a composer keeps their copyright. So at any moment, they could take their music down off of that site, or they could send the music to a traditional publisher because they have that control. So I think that's tricky to sustain a business with that uncertainty. It's not impossible. And there are some companies doing it really, really well. I think also in the self-publishing model, there's not a filter. There's not a vetting process. So, me as a composer, I could say all of my works are good and should be sold to the people. And that might be true for some people. I know it's not true of my music. There are pieces that will never see the light of day. But I think that it's good to have someone who's able to kind of vet what you're putting out there and filter it and have another eye on it. So let's see, there are just lots of good things. I think a really good balance for our industry is to have, some things published by a traditional publisher, some things published by self-publishing or a collective or marketplace. It creates these opportunities for all different types of music that, something that a traditional publisher might not be able to publish can go to a self-published website and still be out there in the world. So I think there are good things about both sides, really.
Jump in briefly here to shout out another sponsor for this show, this episode today, and that's SightReadingFactory.com. A lot of you know that during the pandemic, they have given free student use codes for, I don't know how many kids across the country. It's got to be thousands. They're an amazing company that's doing awesome things, and I'm sure with all of this free stuff they've been giving out, they're going to need our help getting the school year going back again. And of course, you've already probably figured out how valuable of a resource it is in an online learning scenario, but it's also an even more valuable resource in class. So as you're planning for next school year, make sure you set aside that budget to get yourself a membership and get each of your students, every single one of them, a membership. So you're prepared, and so that you can be giving those individual assignments throughout the year. It's really the best of both worlds. So you go to SightReadingFactory.com, get signed up, get your students signed up, and then you can enter Choralosophy at checkout to get 10% off the whole thing. And that's a very helpful thing. And then next, brought to you by my growing crowd over on Patreon who have been such an amazing support to the show. truly are keeping the lights on for as little as $3 a month. We've got people jumping in to help out over there to make sure that the costs of the show are covered and that we can continue to put out this content and professional development and discussion and news and all the different things that we're trying to do on Choralosophy. So if you're willing to jump on over there and become part of the team, that's an option for you as well over at patreon.com/Choralosophy. Now back to Susan.
The need for good recordings has become really essential in selling a work and marketing a work. So every new edition that is published or put out into the world has to have a good demo recording, or it just simply will not sell. And in fact, a lot of the music stores and music dealers won't promote the works unless they have recordings, because they see this to be true as well. I think we've started in the past few years to hear kind of some pushback from customers, from conductors who want to hear recordings that are made with, like, quote unquote real choirs rather than studio singers. Studio singers have been really essential over the past several years for creating recordings that are, accurate in how the notes sound and everything, and keeping the cost down. But now with kind of all of this accessibility and these platforms for hearing good recordings on YouTube and streaming services and all of this stuff, the studio singer recording, it's becoming less acceptable. So I'm curious to see how that changes.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Yes, it's true.
They are the butt of many choral director jokes.
Yes, yeah. And I will just throw in there that obviously these people who are singing in studios and producing this music are very talented singers and very talented people, great musicians.
Oh, yeah, I've done it before.
Yes, right. I think a lot of us probably have. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's nothing at all against what those people can do. It's just the way that the end result sounds. People are starting to want to hear that real choir sound rather than the duplicated voices and all of that. So it's something we have to be willing to shift and improve.
Yeah, it was virtual choir before virtual choir was cool.
Oh, that's so true. Yeah, I've never thought about it like that. Yeah, yep.
Singing with a click track in my ear.
Yes, I mean that's not really how it is in real life, So we have to just be really sensitive to that and make sure that what we're providing, if we're expecting a customer to spend, $2 on an octavo, and then multiply that by however many singers they have, we just got to make sure that what we're giving them is very helpful to them. That we are that nonstop or that one-stop resource for the conductor.
Right.
So the recordings are a huge part of that. Kind of related to that, the fourth thing that I've seen change, publisher websites. There's a much greater expectation of what the quality of those websites should be like. So, like you mentioned, having to purchase the digital copies to be able to see the octavo. Now if you don't have sample pages of the octavo on the website, it's never going to sell. And I would even say at Walton, we've started putting all of the whole octavo. I know some other publishers have also done that, just making sure they're protected so that they can't be downloaded. But providing all of the sample pages for the whole octavo so that the conductor can see everything before they purchase and not have to purchase a digital copy first.
Right.
That's so important. There also has to be, like I said, recordings, good search capabilities, but I think also quality of design of the website. It has to look sharp, look good. And I think as musicians, as publishers, sometimes we're behind the curve on that, just as an industry. So I think we're starting to see, image counts and the way something looks, and if it's slick and sharp, that's important these days. I think the fifth change I've seen, there's been a rise of the need for all artists, but for publishers as well, to utilize social media for marketing. It's kind of like a no-brainer. And I don't think it's a huge deal yet. It's kind of hard for a music publisher to have a presence on like Instagram, for example. We tried at Walton to have an Instagram account for a while, and it's like there's only so many like, music covers and like little snippets of sheet music that you can post before it's really not interesting anymore. So the sixth change that I've seen is video live streaming of concerts and worship services becoming more popular. And that's created a lot of questions and concerns about, how do you go about that legally? Am I covered by that already? Am I not? So just to touch on that for a moment, most universities...
that's going to get big here in a bit.
Yes, absolutely. Right now, it's especially a concern. So most universities, public schools, concert halls, they pay annual license fees to ASCAP and BMI. At universities, this is usually covered like in student fees for each semester. In concert halls, you'll see that covered by those little extra fees that you get on a ticket purchase. A little bit of, a student fee goes to ASCAP for the whole year. And that covers all of the performances of music by performing ensembles. It also covers like the music that's broadcast over loudspeakers at the basketball game or the football game or whatever that might be. All of that gets reported back to ASCAP or BMI, and then royalties are paid to composers, songwriters, and artists for that use. However, the specific license for that the institution has with ASCAP or BMI may or may not cover the live streaming aspect of things. So it's important for each institution to check the terms of that agreement that they have with ASCAP or BMI to find out if their actual license covers the live streaming. Because sometimes that's included. You kind of pay for what you get. So if you're paying a little more, then you probably have that covered already. If you aren't, then that will need to be arranged before live streaming is legally allowed.
Okay.
There are also...
I have a question about that because I'm going to admit my ignorance to this topic. I've been teaching in a public school for 17 years, and I have no idea what our institution's agreement is with ASCAP or BMI or whoever. Is that my job as the choir director, or is that usually something that the school districts do?
It's my understanding that it would be something that the school districts handle. And it's also my understanding that someone collects the information of what is programmed. So I don't know about you, but I know at some schools, if you have a choir concert, then you send your program to somebody, or somebody maybe magically gets it because they go to the concert or something like that. Somehow that information is gathered by somebody. And some places have more, really stringent, like at a university, for example, the concert program is always sent to a certain person, and then that certain person handles reporting all of that use back. In public school districts, I'm not totally sure on how that's handled, if there's a standard way. Someone might be doing that work in your district and you just don't realize it, but someone's watching, for the programs or something like that. So it's something to maybe, if you have a fine arts coordinator in your district, or maybe your principal might know something about that, or a secretary might know something about that. It's worth checking just to make sure that that's getting reported, because all of those performances, there's money allocated to go back to composers and to songwriters for the use of their music, and that just strengthens the whole industry.
So is there any bearing, because my question then would be, where does that money come from? So let's say in my high school choir program, I buy 100 copies of Susan LaBarr's Grace Before Sleep for SATB. And then the kids, what I think the common intuition would be that by buying those copies, I have also bought the right to sing them in front of people in a free concert, because all of our concerts are free. So are you saying that that's not correct?
Somewhat. We might have to like check on this to make sure that I'm saying it correctly, but it's my understanding that there's a little bit of a difference between the print music copy and like the performance of the song.
Hmm.
And so there's nothing extra that if you've purchased the music, there's nothing extra that you have to do to have permission to perform that in a concert. You don't have to worry about anything else. You're good to go. However, for things like so the money in the case of a school, the money comes from student fees. So like university student fees. In a district, like every school district also has an allocation of their budget that goes to ASCAP. So that is already just covered. That covers the performance of the song for you. You don't have to worry about anything extra. At a concert hall, for example, if a group is learning, let's say that it's your high school choir and you're going to perform at the Kaufman in Kansas City. And so you have purchased that music, you've used it in your classroom, you've learned it, you've performed it in your school, then you're going to the Kaufman, people are buying tickets. That little ticket fee, part of that little ticket fee is going to go to the concert hall's ASCAP license. They send that to, they report what songs you performed. And then part of that fee then goes back to the composer, and rightly so.
Right. Oh, and that part makes sense. I think my confusion was around, I think most of us in educational choral world don't charge tickets for a choir concert. And
Right.
I wonder if that would create a distinction for what our ASCAP license would require. I wonder if there's a distinction of a free performance versus one with tickets.
Yeah, I think there is, but I am not 100% sure.
Yeah, no, and I know you're not a copyright lawyer, but I just thought, I figure you would have. I mean, obviously, I didn't know any of the other stuff that you just said, so I'm definitely going to check out with my district what we do. For that, because I'm pretty confident. I'm pretty confident no one in my district checks on what songs we're doing in my concerts.
Yeah, it could be good to find that out, and just for those composers you love, programming helps them out when you make sure that that's getting reported.
Yeah. Okay. Good to know. All right. Yes. Keep us going.
Yeah, I think I have two more here on changes that I've seen in the past, say, 10 years or so. The seventh change that I've seen is the posting of videos on platforms like YouTube. It's become not only more popular, of course, but in many ways essential to a song's success. So if you have two pieces, they're both great. This one gets performed by the St. Olaf Choir in a beautiful video from a cathedral in Norway. This one does not. This piece is going to soar off the shelves.
Yep.
So there was a Music Modernization Act that was passed in 2018. It was passed unanimously by the U.S. House and Senate, like one of the only bills to ever be passed unanimously. And I'll go into more of that later, I think, the next thing we're going to talk about. But that Music Modernization Act has started to hold YouTube and things like that accountable to artists. So that's been a really positive change here just recently.
Yeah, that's interesting. I know I've gotten a lot more notifications from YouTube on copyright violations than on all my channels than I've ever gotten before, even just a choir singing. And I wonder, and I'm sure we will get to this more later, but I imagine there's going to be a fine line that'll have to be established there between what types of things the publishing industry might be doing to shoot themselves in the foot if they get too strict about that. Because as you said, a great recording that a choir puts up on YouTube could cause the piece to sell and a whole lot. And there's a very low likelihood that choir would make any money from the YouTube video at all. Mm-hmm. And so to me, the Wild West might help the publishing industry a little bit.
Right. And I guess I should also clarify or just make known that MMA, I'll call it that so I don't have to say modernization so many times. The MMA, it probably applies much more to the commercial musical, pop music, rock music, that sort of thing.
Yes.
It's probably not going to trickle down to choral music that much, but it does kind of set the precedent, which is good. I do know that there are some choral music publishers. Santa Barbara Music Publishing, for one, has a statement on their website that you can find that says that you are allowed to post your video to YouTube.
Oh,
Like, if you have purchased music from them and performed it, made a video, you're allowed to post it. And I think that's really the view of most, if not all, choral music publishers. You can ask permission. I think the idea is like you ask permission to do it because maybe there is something that is copyrighted. If it's a song by a popular artist that happens to be a choral arrangement of it, maybe that artist doesn't allow that to be public or to be posted. It's just good to ask the copyright holder first. But I think most choral music publishers would say, "Yep, please post it. This is great."
Yep. Okay. All right. Good.
Let's see. The last thing is a quick one. We've seen the rise of music streaming services, of course, and the decline of physical CD sales in a major way. Just this year, for our Walton music promotion, we decided to finally discontinue sending CDs to the 10,000 conductors that we send our promotion to.
Okay, that's a great comprehensive list. And if you don't mind, maybe afterwards you could send that to me, and I could include just your bullet points in the show notes
Great.
for people.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm going to jump now to a question from one of my Patreon members, Ross Cawthon, who asked a couple of questions actually. Who asks if there are any hot button topics in the publishing world right now that maybe are being discussed on the industry side, but we wouldn't be discussing on Facebook maybe as much. He mentioned a recent injunction regarding Trisona, and I guess there was a show choir case, not paying the right royalties or something. Do you know about that case?
Yeah, I know just a little bit. I don't know the details. I certainly work with some people who do know a lot more about those details, but I know Trisona is a licensing company, and they cover, when a show choir or a marching band wants to do an arrangement of a popular work or a medley of songs by a famous songwriter or something like that. They would cover that licensing to make sure that they collect payment for the arrangement, and then they distribute that payment to the original songwriter. So I'm not really sure. I don't want to try to go into details of that particular case because I'm not super familiar with it, but I do know that Trisona had kind of a reputation for going after people who maybe didn't know that they needed to get the certain permission or just didn't get the permission. I tend to, again, think that people try to do the right thing if they can. So I think Trisona was very aggressive in how they would go after groups that maybe didn't get the correct permission, and that it was becoming a problem or something that was, just being gone about in the right way. So I know that the ruling sided on the side of not Trisona, the other side. So it was, I think it was a good thing for just making sure that everyone can kind of be in this together, that we're not being made victims of, this big company. But I think Trisona's intentions are also really good. So making sure that composers and songwriters are paid for the use of their work obviously is a good thing. So finding a balance, and I think that case is going to help find a better balance there. I think from my perspective, and what I do in my little choral music publishing world, the big issue that I hear about all the time is the self-publishing versus traditional publishing. I think we're going to get into some myths of the publishing world later, but I think one of the myths, I guess, that I hear a lot is, well, the composer just gets 10% of a royalty and the publisher keeps 90%. And that's just hugely inaccurate. And I know this from being a composer and also being in a music publisher, working very closely with how that all goes. And yes, the composer gets 10%, but at the end of the day, the publisher is left with pretty much equal to that percentage in profit. So after, the production of the octavo, the printing, the marketing, the website, the staff payment, all of this stuff, the publisher is not left with a 90% profit. That's just not how any business works. So I think that people who work for publishers, traditional publishers, can get really heated about, how much they believe in traditional publishing. I think people who are self-published get very heated about why they believe that's good. I just tend to think they're both really viable, and that sometimes one composer can self-publish everything and it can be great. One composer can traditionally publish everything and it can be great. But more often than not these days, one single composer can self-publish a few things, maybe publish a few things to really get the backing of someone who can market to thousands and thousands of people. Then once the industry, the customers, they see, oh, this is a great piece. What else does this composer have? Then they end up on the composer's website where they see all this other music that they've self-published. How great is that? I mean, that's just...
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm so glad you brought that up, because that argument gets kind of reveals a general lack of economic literacy. That people would say, okay, so the octavo costs $2.80, and the composer only gets 10% of that. Therefore, the greedy publishing company keeps the profit of the rest of that. As if the building that they operate in is free, and as if the printing press is free, and as if the shipping is free. I saw somebody on Twitter the other day talking about how a $4 cup of coffee from Starbucks should only cost $1, because it should that as long as the farmer that grew the coffee got paid, that's all that matters. And I just, like, to me, I can't imagine looking at the world that way. And I guess the barista doesn't get paid, Starbucks doesn't get to pay the rent at their building. The reality is that the profit on a $4 cup of coffee is about 20 cents.
I wish we lived in a world where that's all that mattered. I mean, how simple would that be? It would be great, but it's just not the reality at all.
Well, I think we used to live in a world where it was that simple, and it was when we were hunter-gatherers.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be in a world where it's that simple. I think the amount of cooperation that we have now is what makes what makes products cool. So no, I totally understand that, and I agree that. In fact, I talked on several episodes back on this show with Eric Barnum, who brought up a similar point that you just mentioned, which was that for some composers, the sweet spot is being published by traditional means for some types of works. And then, like what Eric said to me on this show, was that then there are some things that he writes that just aren't going to be a mass marketable thing for a lot of choirs, but they still are an important part of his artistic expression. And so what he does there is he publishes them on graphite.
Yes, he's such a great example of that synergy. I get to work with him at Walton on things that make sense for our customers, and our customers really look forward to his music that we publish.
Yep.
And then he'll send things, and he'll even say in an email, like, this might not be right for Walton. Just want you to take a look. And if it's not, I'll put it over here. And how great is that there is a place for him to put that music? Because I talk to composers about this all the time. If we do not accept a piece for publication, that it doesn't mean the piece isn't artistically valuable. It just means that in a grand scope, it might not sell thousands of copies, but it still needs to be in the world. So to have a site like Graphite to put those types of works on, which a lot of pieces on Graphite's site, for example, end up taking off as well. So it's great just to have different opinions and different aesthetics to help to find places for all of these things.
Right. Yeah. It's always been my opinion that the share of the pie, so to speak, in a market matters a whole lot less than whether or not the pie is growing. And so all of these composers, like a self-published composer like Ryan Main or like Jake Runestad or any of those guys, I don't know that that you could really make the argument that they are even taking away from some of the other methods, because in so many ways they're growing the pie. They're making access to people that might otherwise not have access to our art form, and doing things in new and innovative ways. And I think that's probably good for everybody. But that kind of transitions us into that kind of my next topic, which I want to turn our eyes a little bit towards the future and start making some prognostications. Now, of course, we are in this pandemic time, and currently, as we record this, our entire profession is in freak out mode from thinking about the possibility of not having choir in the format that we're used to anytime soon. So, if we could, I know it'll be hard, but thinking about what you were predicting might change in your industry anyway. And then if you could think about, like, now that we know all this pandemic stuff that's going on, how might that play into it also?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll come at it from like, if we all go back to normal,
Right.
what will we see? And maybe just towards the end, touch on, what's happening right now.
Yeah.
I have 9 ways here, and I'll try to be quick with them. But 9 ways that I think that we could see changes in this industry, maybe over the next 20 years or so. First, I think we'll continue to see the rise of digital music sales, versus print music sales, like we talked about earlier. We'll see the increase of accessibility of technology. So I think that'll make this all go, turn towards digital rather than print. But I do tend to think that we probably won't really see that until kind of this generation, or even the next generation of conductors kind of passes through the system, until we get to conductors who have grown up totally digital. People like you and I, we grew up kind of in this mixed world of like not having technology, and then all of a sudden having technology in our lives. So we still really value the print copy. But I think in a couple of generations, we'll probably turn totally digitally. The second thing, let's see, I think we'll continue to see the consolidation of music publishers and music dealers. So as small publishers or music catalogs start to struggle, or when their owners retire, they are usually bought up by larger companies. So we've seen that with my company. I work with the Walton music catalog, but we are now owned by GIA Publications. When Gunilla Luboff retired, she sold her catalog, and GIA Publications bought the catalog, and now it's a division of GIA. Which has been incredible for the Walton catalog. It's just made all these resources available. It's just improved everything greatly. We've also seen, as small mom and pop music dealers or music stores struggle and lose their customers to these larger companies. They're usually closed, or they're purchased by bigger dealers. And so I tend to think that too much consolidation, whether it's in the choral music world or just the economic world, I think it's not good. Too much consolidation is not good, especially for our industry. I think it's important that we continue to have a lot of different opinions and tastes and aesthetics and options. I think that all makes us stronger. If everyone's controlled by one company, I think it weakens everything. I think it's also, as we've talked about, good for composers to have different places to send their music as it applies to different markets and different customers. So I hope we don't see too much of that consolidation. I think it's also like, when conductors are shopping for music, to have like a trusted person they can easily go to at a smaller company is so important when they have a question or a concern. So if this huge company where it's hard to reach someone, that's really, really tricky.
Yeah.
So the third way, let's see, I think we'll see artists continuing to take more control of their destinies, if that, is a good way to say it. I think they'll become more involved in the publishing process and its ins and outs. They'll get to know more about it. They might start, requesting a bigger piece of the pie in return for this or that. Artists, composers becoming more of business people rather than just, here's my piece, sign it away, I'm done. They're going to continue to be more involved in the process, which will make everything stronger.
Mm-hmm.
I think, let's see, the fourth way, I think kind of related here to the publishing industry, I think we'll continue to see stylistic changes in the choral music that's written and published. Maybe more so than we've seen over the past 20 years. I think it's really going to change. I think we have seen and we will continue to see music in the choral world that's more world music focused and less Eurocentric. I think we will see more rhythm and more action in songs, less static, more action. That could be, actual rhythmic things. It can just be intensity. We still have a need for the beautiful homophonic Latin piece that just makes the choir sound so beautiful when they're in a very resonant space. But I think that we're performing in different spaces and we're needing music that fits those spaces better, to try to sing that very homophonic Latin, slow, pretty thing in an unusual space doesn't always work. So I think we'll see just more variety of music styles and rhythm. I think we'll also see much more diversity of composers. And I think we'll see, in terms of what's being published, I think there are a lot of diverse composers out there writing music, but I think we're becoming more aware of the fact that as publishers, we need to be at the forefront of making sure that our catalogs are diverse in composers' race, background, gender, all of that good stuff. And I think we'll see music that speaks to more diverse bodies of singers. So, music that doesn't just come from this one point of view about this one thing, but where we're reaching all types of singers and all types of people. I think we'll also see, just maybe personally, I think we are seeing and will definitely continue to see a return to kind of more minimalistic music. This world is very filled with stimulation and distraction. And so I think that we're seeing some music that really succeeds both in the commercial music world and, music that's on the radio and in our choral music world that is less. It's not too much. We're taking back some of the divisi, taking back some of the clustery chords and things like that, and just becoming a little more bare, which I think is a great thing.
That's interesting.
I think number 5, let's see, I think we'll continue to see a push to reform music copyright for the digital age. And that starts with the Music Modernization Act that I mentioned earlier. So there's a quote that I really liked in an article that I read by David Israelite. He's the president and CEO of the National Music Publishers Association. He said, "American music has given the world an incalculable cultural contribution, but the people creating that music have never seen the fair fruits of their labor." I thought that was really good. So the MMA, it's going to demand that YouTube and similar sites take action against copyright violations. So again, we talked a little bit about how this probably won't affect the choral music world too greatly, but something I read was we've seen YouTube and similar sites figure out how to respond quickly to videos that are posted that promote hate or violence or pornography or terror. We've seen that they're able to block and take those things down. So we think it's possible for them to also do similar things with music copyright and intellectual property. So that's, I think, going to become more something we see more of in the coming years. I think that we'll also see some better transparency about how those types of services pay royalties to songwriters and copyright holders. there's actually going to be a creation of a big database of like all the music in the world. I don't know who is on that team that's creating that, but I would not want to be on that team because that sounds incredibly daunting. But it's called the Mechanical Licensing Collective. And so they're going to, it's like a nonprofit organization that's going to create this database of like all the music ever. And so that it will be able to be tracked better, because that doesn't exist right now. It's kind of in lots of different places.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Let's see. Number 6. I think we'll start to see some technology changes to fit distance learning. And I think this would happen anyway, but especially now in this pandemic situation. I think that we'll see publishers figuring out how to have better digital delivery of their materials, maybe even like choral music subscriptions of some sort where those things are sent digitally for digital use. I think we'll see more robust platforms for access to music. So like better technology for viewing music or sharing with group choirs. I think more publishers, if not all publishers, will present their material totally digitally. We're talking maybe in 20 years, maybe, where it won't be available in print anymore. It will be totally digital. Number 7, I think CDs will very soon be a thing of the past, where CDs are just not produced anymore. They barely are produced now, and they don't sell very well at all. So it's just a matter of time. I think number 8, we'll see changes and increases in royalty rates for artists. And as an example, I think mechanical license rates. So like when someone makes a recording of your song, they are to pay mechanical license fees, and those fees are government, and those, especially with the MMA passed, I think that we'll see an increase of those. And then finally, and kind of speaking to the situation that we're currently in, I think the want and need for choral music is rising, and I think it will continue to rise, which maybe seems totally opposite of all these digital things we've talked about just now. But I think in this world that's increasingly, distracted, increasingly digital, people are going to want togetherness, and they're going to want beauty, and they're going to want simple things. And so I think the experience of singing together, it's reaching and speaking to young people, students, it's speaking to all of us. And I think it's going to just be more relevant as we come out of this, really than ever.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it's going to be on us to figure out ways to do that, I think. And yeah, so that's awesome. Okay, so let's kind of, as we kind of wrap all of this up, because my goodness, this is so much information that I think we just don't know. Like, these are things that as choral directors, like I mentioned earlier, been teaching forever, and I don't know anything about ASCAP in my district. I don't know about.
Yeah.
I knew at my church when I was working in church music, I knew that we had a license there to do certain things, but in a big school district, I don't know. So that's just one of many examples. I think choral directors I know that we're not educated in our undergrads. We might.
Well, and you don't, as teachers, you don't have time. You have so much to do. And I'm seeing that as I'm watching my husband try to teach from home and help my kid with school. Like, teachers don't really have time for all this. You have so much to do already. So it's so understandable. And
right.
Publishers are here to help you. So, at any moment, I think I'll let you finish here.
Yeah, no, it's fine. My question was going to be, considering how uneducated we are on how we should be interacting with copyright, with publishing, what are some of the big mistakes / myths that you see out there with choral directors? Like, we think that this XYZ is okay, so we do it, and then come to find out it's actually not okay. Can you give any examples of that?
Yeah, so I was about to say, when I interrupted you, that I think that people think of music publishers as these huge, unreachable conglomerations of, these people who do all these things that we can't possibly know about, and I can never get in contact with them. When in fact, most of the choral music publishers are very small and very intimate and very willing to help anyone who has a question. And in fact, a lot of times, I work with a lot of composers who are also conductors. And so I'll get questions from these people who I have good working relationships with, and they'll say, I have this question that's not really related to my composing. In fact, it's this question about this piece that's published by a different company, but I just am wondering, this or that. And it's like, yes, please, I'm here to help you. We are here to help you. I think that in terms of, teachers, I think a lot of conductors, teachers will be listening to this. So I think there are a lot of myths that surround the educational use term.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought I'd just touch on what the educational use term allows, because it is a thing. It is a real thing. And there are a lot of great things that you can, that are covered by it. But there are things that are not as well that I think maybe people think are. So the things that it covers, so it allows for one recording of a performance to be made for educational or archival purposes. So you can, make one video recording of your concert and then keep that in the choral library or wherever, or keep it on a computer, I guess, these days. Right. To make multiple recordings, whether that's audio or video, there are licenses that are required. So even if it's a copy of a recording that's going to, for free, to be given to the parents of your choir, you still have to get a mechanical license if it's an audio recording, or a synchronization license if it's a video recording. And those are available at a very minimal fee. So like a mechanical license is 9.1 cents per copy per song for songs that are less than 5 minutes long. So if, you're making 10 copies of something, that's very minimal, 90 cents, essentially. So that just ensures that then when someone's listening to it and enjoying that recording later, that the composer has been compensated in some way for that. It's such a strange thing to wrap our brains around, but it is important to do. So the educational use, it allows for performance or display of copyrighted works in face-to-face teaching activities at nonprofit educational institutions. So, for example, playing a recording of a song from a CD in the classroom as a part of a teaching activity. But if you're going to broadcast music, at a concert or at a sporting event, that does require that license through ASCAP or BMI that we talked about earlier, which most schools have. You might be able to hear my son running around downstairs. I don't know. Educational use allows for making copies of up to 10% of a musical work for class study, as long as that 10% doesn't constitute a single performable unit. So if you have a choral octavo and you want to copy 10% of it, maybe it's a scale or a phrase or something that could be used in a warm-up or for study or something like that, you are allowed to copy that as long as it's just up to 10% of that unit. If you have like a book of 10 songs and you think, oh, that means I can copy one of the songs and distribute that to everyone, that is actually not allowed because that's a single performable unit.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
You have to have permission to make that copy. Educational use allows for the rearranging, editing, or simplification of a copyrighted work for educational purposes, provided that the fundamental character of that work is not changed. So note that this is for classroom purposes only. So if you had a song by Mark Patterson and you wanted to use it with your 5th grade class, but your basses could not reach some of the notes that were in that particular arrangement, so you needed to rearrange that part for your singers, you can do that for classroom purposes. So like if you just wanted them to explore this piece or teach them something through singing this piece in your class, that's fine. but it's not okay for performance, technically. Most composers or publishers, a lot of them will be okay with that, especially if it's music like what I just mentioned. You have something for a middle school that, like, my basses can't sing that note. Can I take it up the octave or choose a different note in that chord? That's usually fine. And a publisher will say, yep, you can do that. They'll check with their composer, say, is this okay with you? And it's all okay. But if you want to make a significantly new arrangement of something for performance, that's usually okay. You just have to secure an arrangement license first. Let's see. I think there are two more things, or one more thing. Educational use allows for performances of songs to demonstrate technique during music class. So that could be someone singing that copyrighted song or playing a song on a CD. But again, any sort of public performance or public recording requires that ASCAP or BMI license. On this topic, I want to just mention, because it seems maybe that it's really simple, but I think maybe some people don't know. If you're trying to figure out who the publisher of a song is, a great way is to just open up the sheet music and look at that first page of music. At the very bottom of the page in the copyright, it'll list who the publisher is and their address. Usually these days with new editions, it'll list a website as well. So you can go and search for that publisher name and get their contact information. One kind of related myth, and I think this is my last one that I could think of, I hear this a lot, that conductors will say, oh yeah, when I get a new piece, I make copies of it for all my choir and keep the real copies in the library because I don't want them to get messed up by my singers who write all over them or lose them or whatever. Well, what I'll say to that is that's technically not legal. You really should have the original copy for each singer in your choir. The price of the octavos, like many products in the world, are set with that use in mind. So if we knew that a choir was going to purchase 50 copies of an octavo to keep for all of eternity because they're never going to use them, we would charge a lot more for it. So part of that price, it takes into consideration that the paper will wear out eventually. We do all publishers print on really high quality paper, way better than what you print, if you were to print it off in your own printer or on your copier. But we do take that into consideration that eventually those will need to be replaced. So we charge accordingly for that. So again, all of this is to support that artist who has written this beautiful music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And I get here's another one, and I think I already know what the answer will be. But let's say I've ordered a bunch of physical copies from a traditional publisher, but they're not going to be here on time for my first rehearsal. So I make some photocopies, which we use that day, and then throw them away.
Yeah. So the best thing to do in that situation is just to ask the publisher that question. So if you are waiting on copies, they're not there yet, just send an email to the publisher, just to their their general contact email, or if you have a contact there, contact that person. If it's a Walton piece, contact me. It's fine. I'm here to help. Most publishers, I would venture to guess, would say, yes, absolutely. Make a copy of that for now. Just destroy them when your real copies arrive, or it's okay to send that to your students for use on their iPad while you wait for those copies to arrive. We don't want to promote a lot of paper usage when it's not necessary, but that is almost always going to be just fine and so understandable. Everyone is reasonable here, but I think that one thing I see a lot, like on the different Facebook pages, on the choir director Facebook pages, is someone putting a post that says, I haven't received my copies of this or that. Does anyone have a copy you can send me I really need it to make copies of it. And what I always want to say is, like, just instead of posting that on Facebook, just send an email to the publisher, because they will send you the PDF to make the copies you need of until you get those real copies. Like, just so easy to contact the publisher. If you know the publisher and can do that instead, they can help you. more
So what
often than
about, yeah, that's a good point. What about choirs that, because you're seeing this more and more now anyway, and I would imagine in the future digital learning environments that we might find ourselves in, we're going to see it even more. What about school choir programs that are one-to-one, where we have devices in the kids' hands? And there are already a lot of choirs that exclusively rehearse with iPads in the singer's hands. But it sounds like that would be just as illegal as making a photocopy, because of the lack of wear and tear that you were talking about before on the print sheet music. So how do we deal with that?
I would say that that is an issue that has not been figured out yet, um, by the industry as a whole,
Hmm.
not by any means. Most places I know, like at where my husband teaches, the students are to purchase copies from the bookstore for their semester, worth of sheet music, and they'll go and purchase the copies, and then several of them will scan the music into their iPad, but they have purchased that copy for themselves. Yeah, there's not wear and tear on their edition on their iPad. Um, One thing at our company that we've done is we charge. Some companies will charge less for the digital copy than for the print copy. We actually do charge the same amount because most of the cost for the edition actually goes into the engraving and editing and the website hosting of whatever it is, the recording, making a demo recording, this and that. A very small cost is actually in the printing, the paper and the ink and the time to print the music in the print shop. That's a very tiny cost. So we currently keep that digital price the same as the print price to kind of account for exactly what you've just said. I don't think it's a perfect system. I don't think we really know all the implications of all of that yet, and I think we'll see that in the next 10 to 20 years, and we'll be adjusting as needed.
Yeah, it sounds like what we need publishers of all types to offer something like a digital use license. Um,
Yeah, that could be coming eventually. I think that also I've heard of some different people working on just better technology or services where a choir director or a school can pay a semester subscription and then have access to titles, but then maybe at the end of the semester it goes away. But all of your but the software maybe keeps all the markings that you've made on that edition, so that then if you use it 2 years later, you can purchase that edition, it'll load in, and then all your markings will show up on it, so that you don't, because that's important too.
yeah,
Like I have copies of things I've sung that if I sing it again, I want to know all that stuff that I learned last time I sang it. So we don't want to lose all of that capability. So there are things being worked on. It's just, yeah, still in development for
yeah,
sure.
I would imagine at that point we're talking about something akin to a Netflix for sheet music kind of a model,
Exactly.
where you
Yeah.
have access to an entire library for a subscription. I think that would be, yeah, that would be huge.
Yeah. And like I said, I've heard or personally talked to some people who are actively working on that. So hopefully that will become available. Or if someone's out there and is like, oh, I already made that, let me get it out into the world. This is probably now the time to be doing that.
Yeah, well, this is all such great information, and we've got a lot under our belt already today. So we'll kind of wrap this up, and if we could, I always like whenever I have a composer on the show, I always like to have you finish out by talking to us about something that you are working on that you're passionate about right now. And I know you're passionate about the publishing stuff, as we've just discussed, but maybe from the composer side, are you working on something right now?
Yeah. Before I say that, I will just mention really quickly again, which I think I've said a few times, but I do not know everything about all of this. And I just want to make that clear that, I'm sure there are some things that I've said that could be improved upon, or if anyone has, more to add, then it would be great to know even more information. But hopefully this has been helpful and maybe made some sort of sense. So as a composer, let's see. in this, it's a unique time, of course, and I think it's a time when a lot of composers are reflecting on just text and things that really bring comfort, maybe some healing, some sort of reprise from everything that's going on. And so I am working on a piece right now. I never work on pieces just for fun. Like, I don't even know if I can think of a time I've done that. It's always been for commission. But I found a poem. I've been working with Robert Bodie on, we're publishing a book of his poems here at Walton. And so that will be coming out in the coming months. And so in that, I've discovered some of his poetry that I hadn't read before. And there's a poem that really speaks to what's going on right now. And so I've written melody and structure of that song. And I have a friend named Jim Wilson. He's a brilliant pianist in Texas. And he is going to be writing the accompaniment for that. And then I'll fill in choral parts. And then I don't know what we'll do with it at that point, but it's an amazing text called We Are Held. And it just really speaks to me during this time, and hopefully it'll speak to others as well.
That's exciting. I can't wait to see it and hear it, and hear a real life choir sing it.
Yes. Please,
it's very exciting. Well, Susan, thank you so much. And I promise I will not call this episode Susan LaBarr Knows Everything.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Just so that's clear. But we all really appreciate your expertise and your insights. And like I said, this is a topic that we don't spend a lot of time talking about and thinking about. So I thought it might be valuable to get you to chime in, and you did not disappoint. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me, and good luck everyone with all of these concerns and with all that the future holds.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you, as always, for sticking around to the end of the episode. I hope you learned something in that conversation. Tons of stuff about streaming and copyright and all of the things that we're going to need to know going forward. So I think that might be the type of episode that you can do some scrolling forward and scrolling back to find the resources. I think that might be perfect. In fact, in order to help you do that, in the show notes, I've got Susan's notes. So a Google Doc with all of her bullet points that she hit during the episode, if you'd like to go back and check on those things. Of course, have access to Susan, like she mentioned in the conversation. She at Walton and all the other publishers, they really do want to help you, so I encourage you to reach out. So things that you can do if you got something out of this episode to show your appreciation. I need help getting the word out about the show. The Facebook algorithm, the Twitter algorithms, everything else, Instagram, do not let me get the word out by myself without paying a whole bunch. So the things you can do are give a like in your podcast app, or a subscription, or a rating, or whatever your podcast app allows you to do. Anytime you interact with the show, it helps other people see it. Of course, join Choralosophers, our Facebook page, where you can have conversations about show topics and other choral topics. And of course, like I mentioned, hit up those sponsors, vocevista.com/choralosophy. Check out that product, sightreadingfactory.com. We've also got two awesome independent sheet music publishers, ryanmain.com and graphitepublishing.com, are also sponsors of the show. At any of those websites, you can use Choralosophy at checkout to get 10% off. So I strongly encourage you to do that. And finally, that Patreon page as well is a great way to show your support. So thanks a lot for listening, and we'll be back with you soon with more choral content. Thanks a lot for listening.